bunch of cards.
A bunch of cards. I didn't want to drop them.
Oh, I recognize it. My car.
That's your car? One of our guests today was brought that for us. I'm not sure who it was. You want to raise your hand?
That's a very nice eagle.
Not sure, but thank you for bringing it. So we know that some other interviews will cover your time before and after Space 1999. But after Mission Impossible, you started several films, including The Following Mr. Tibbs, which was the follow-up to The Heat of the Night. And you guest starred on television. How did Space 1999 come to you?
Well, through Jerry Anderson, obviously, he came to our house. Barbara and I were still married in those days, and the films that were being offered me at that point, I mean, yes, Tibbs, there were a couple of them, but then after that, a bunch of films that should be turned into guitar picks were offered me, and I began to realize that Barbara and I wanted to work together, keep our family together, and we were offered Space 1999, and I always liked science fiction, though I did turn down Star Trek in favor of Mission Impossible. When I was offered Mr. Spock before he was, and passed on it because I didn't want to play a character without emotion. But Star Trek, which was on the air simultaneously, in fact, Mission Impossible was designated at the time when we started. We were on 2 sound stages, and the next 2 sound stages were Star Trek. So we saw Billy, and Lenny every day practically, and Gene Roddenberry's office was right next to Bruce Geller's office, and my dressing room, the permanent dressing room in the building, was right next to Leonard's. So it was like a bit of a family anyway. It was before Star Wars, and I felt that science fiction is a wonderful medium in which to say things which you couldn't, quote unquote, get away with in other contexts, political things, all kinds of wonderful things. And I was a big fan of Ray Bradbury's and Isaac Asimov's. I read a lot of science fiction over the years. I felt it was a perfect time for a show like that. And we moved our family to London and worked at Pinewood Studios, which is a wonderful studio, and with a great group of people. And I saw no reason not to do this wonderful show. And that's, Jerry King, a fellow who was with that British company, ATV, from New York, came with Jerry, and Luke Ray was the producer of the show, and it's kind of wonderful because Lou and I had a handshake and never signed that first year's contract until after we finished 24 episodes. Now think about that. Today, with a contract, you find yourself in trouble. Handshakes in those days, for some reason, were honored. Today, a contract isn't. So we found ourselves living in wonderful London, working with great people. Charles Crichton, for instance, who directed a lot of our episodes, had worked with, well, yeah, he did Lavender Hill Mob, and in fact, years later, he and John Cleese wrote and did A Fish Called One. In fact, Kevin Kline beat me out for the Oscar that year. So,
No comments to it.
So it was a very joyful experience, and there was talk about a 3rd season, but Lou's budget for the movies he was doing at the time was about the same amount of money that it would have cost him for Space 1999 in the 3rd year, and we waited on tender hooks as to whether we do a 3rd season, and he decided to do the movie, which was not successful. So kids went to school in London and all was well. It was a very good time in my life.
You were on St. John's Wood, were you living in St. John's Wood? Or I'm living around St. John's Wood?
We were, the first year we lived, right near Abbey Road, where the Beatles walked across the street in that photograph. And then we moved, that was in Little Venice, and boats literally went past our house because the Grand Union Canal was right on our street. And it went from the park in London for 200 miles out into the countryside. It's how the provisions and food in the 1800s, 1700s, 1800s came into London on barges on that canal. And it literally passed out our door. I mean, we looked out the big old window and I see boats go by. And then we moved to Chester Square, which was just off of Eaton Square, which is where British series upstairs, downstairs was. And that was in Belgravia, London. The first year we lived in Tony Curtis's house in London that he acquired when he did the series with Roger Moore. And he still owned it, and I rented it from Tony, who used to come at 3 o'clock in the morning and ring my bell. And I'd say, he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "One of two things." Anyway, it was a pleasant time.
On that note, let's talk a little bit about Jack. He was a bureaucrat here, which I think Jerry Anderson had in 73, had in series before as well. He's a former astronaut, right? He was sent to Base Alpha to be an administrator and investigator.
Exactly.
A little bit different from Ross and Han. But what do you think
Quite different.
Yeah. What do you think the difference is? I mean, how do the characters compare? Which was more interesting to you as a character?
Most every character, I've never met two people in my life who are exactly the same. So I always approach each person in a way, and different predilections, different environments, they come from different places, different times, different spaces, and as a result, they are emotionally different. Their needs are different. Actually, again, we're talking about the future. Unlike Star Trek, space, we're hurtling through space without any control over our trajectory. And if you look at the hardware, it is an extension of what exists now, as opposed to the Enterprise. So it was I put myself into the future in a sense, sure. But not that far into the future. So I know Buzz Aldrin like that. I know Buzz quite well, and so I talked to actual astronauts before I went there, and got to feel them a little bit, So Roland was a performer, really. Was recruited by the Impossible missions because he was a man of 1,000 faces. He was a magician. I had a wonderful Di Vernon, the professor. If anybody who was interested in sleight of hand, if I mentioned Di Vernon's name to a magician, the fact that Di Vernon used to come to the set of he was employed by Bruce Geller. He is like a god. But he was the best card manipulator that ever lived. He could deal seconds, which means you keep the first card on the top of the deck. Second, he could deal seconds, thirds, and fourths. So this is a guy who could put 4 aces on the top of the deck and never touch them. He didn't deal a hand of cards. Deal himself the 4 aces when he wanted to. And you could be this close to him, you couldn't see it. So I had that guy working with me and teaching me tricks, as an example. learner. On certain shows on Mission Impossible, I had to do some magic and deal cards in certain ways and stuff. And I learned to do that, but I had a great teacher. So I went. The differences were very clear. Roland was a person of the present. John Koenig, a man of the future, who was born basically in our time. When I say that, he was born in the time we lived, but the world he grew up in was a different world. And he was a leader, but he didn't expect to have to command a base of 300 people in that manner. So he had to adjust along the way as well as everyone else did to the new life thing. In hopes of finding a planet on their journey which was compatible with our needs so that we could procreate. The problem with living in that confined area was it could only, with the hydroponic unit, could only support 300 people, and that's what we had. So any baby born really had to replace someone who was no longer there, so there were certain restrictions which we didn't talk about, such as birth control. We had lots of men and lots of women, right? And we couldn't have a lot more without running into trouble. So those elements were things that I took into account. And Barry Morse, the first year, Barry was a wonderful guy. It was just a joy working with him and my wife at the time, Barbara. We had done Mission Impossible together as well, and we worked well together. Both had trained at the Actors Studio with Lee Strasberg and the same people. So Barry, I saw Barry on the stage in Los Angeles long before I worked with him doing Pinter's Caretaker in the Billboard Theater there. He was brilliant. So the entire cast, Prentice Hancock and Zia and Nick Tate, but we were the only Americans on the show, and it wasn't often that Britain allows American actors to work even for a long period of time, but because we brought a lot of revenue and employed a lot of actors and technicians, and we were given special dispensation. And we had a terrific time. And Ray Osman and David Tomlin, who had produced The Prisoner, we had some great people coming to us and wonderful actors. Leo McCurd, on it goes. Billy Whitehall was working with us during the day and going to the theater at night, working with Beckett for a play that he had written for her. He didn't want to direct anymore, and she was doing Rockabye, a very good play by Beckett. She'd leave Pinewood and go to Beckett and rehearse in the evening and come back to us in the morning. Sensational actors. Richard Johnson, we had wonderful actors. The great thing about London is the theater and film and television are all in the same city. We in America, New York is the theater town. Los Angeles is the film town. It's 3,000 miles apart. That doesn't exist in London.
One of the things that
Wrong answer.
That's okay. There goes about the third of the questions. But there we go. We'll figure it out.
I hope you felt this.
We'll be okay. One of the things that I was always impressed with about your performances with those years was Ron Hand was a very suave and cool performer, but he's on the sweat.
One of the things I check, the Mission was Jeopardy, because I thought it was essential that the characters, no matter how good they are at what they do, they're a stage, and not only for them, but for the rest of the team, because if Roland is exposed to portray a role, the entire group that is working together is in jeopardy. So I would often play, I'm like, what I'm impersonating another guy? Am I getting through? Is this guy buying it? Is this woman buying it? Because if not, we're in trouble. So I always added that element.
Well, and
You talk about sweat, but it was something very conscious of my thought.
absolutely. In contrast, what I appreciated about John Koenig that some critics didn't was he was not a witty character.
Not at all.
He was an overtrained astronaut who was prepared for crisis. And if he didn't react emotionally to jeopardy initially, that was not because of the character was witty, it was because he'd been trained that way.
Well, absolutely. I was quietly offended by some of those reviews. Star Trek, very different texture show. Kirk always had a certain kind of panache and extension. Letty's character, one of the reasons I turned it down, as I say, was a very stoic character. And I love the ears, but I think if I played a character without emotion, I probably would have had nervous breakdown. Though I knew it would be successful in the sense that it was the 1960s and this guy was like a head, he had the answer to everything. It was calm. And we were in a different situation. We were, as I say, we're hurtling through space and not knowing where the heck we were going. And new things flying past our windows. And everything that goes on is new and has to be coped with. The Enterprise knows where it's going and can't go there. We are at the mercy of whatever. And when I say political, we move between two warring planets. That was a script written about Israel and Palestine. Sure. It was Henry Kissinger was our function, or when those meetings were taking place, that script came out of that.
Right.
But again, critics are critics, and it's very hard to appreciate, for people to appreciate some of the subtleties. Sometimes they don't get it, and
I think a lot of people do that. I think a lot of people do that.
As you say, a character who's in charge of a lot of lives is not going to be flamboyant, or he's doing his best not to endanger people. He's very bright. He's virtually one of the best astronauts that the United States has ever developed. And maybe he appears wooden at times, but it's not, I did Pinocchio, that was a wooden actor.
You mentioned some of your guest artists, I should say, as in the parlance of how they were introduced to the credits. And you had some pretty amazing ones.
Major.
Starting from the beginning, William Treese was Commissioner Simmons.
Absolutely.
Pilot and a couple of other episodes.
Oh, yeah. Christopher Lee.
Absolutely. And Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing.
What was it like working with that dude? Although it's not at the same time.
Not at the same time. Oh, great. We have, to this day, Christopher's panel. Peter, and I talked about his wife who passed away. He was mourning her terribly. They were terrific people. In fact, Christopher was in the makeup chair when they did, and I was in on it. On the next stage, there was to surprise him with "This Is Your Life," and he made a
it was a wild makeup. He had white and black on his face.
And the next thing you know, they whisk him off and bring up everyone in his life out on the stage. And Christopher was absolutely astonished. He had no clue that was going to happen. But you have
Yeah, Patrick Trout.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of Doctor Who fans, obviously, in the show.
Because we were in London, these were people who brought up in the theater. We had great actors guesting all the time.
Margaret Leighton and Julie.
Margaret Leighton was the last thing she ever did. She was quite ill. And when we worked together, and she said, I don't know what I'm saying. And I said, say it with conviction. And I said, she said, but I don't understand half of it. I said, I do. And she was wonderful. And she was very ill at the time. She was married to Michael Wilding, and I shortly after that I went down to their house in the country and visited with them and had dinner with them. And it was virtually the very last thing she did before she passed away. She was a fairly young woman when she died. So, but I mean, this is a woman who played Ophelia opposite Laurence Olivier. I mean, she was one of the great Shakespearean actresses who earned her celebrity by working and doing magnificent roles from the time she was a young actress. I saw her at separate tables on Broadway, and she was, again, leading role brilliant. So I was honored that experience.
As a bit of a boisterous fellow besides myself, one last name, Brian Blessed.
Brian Blessed. Brian Blessed, you know, he's a terrific actor. Big burly fella. He too has done a lot of Shakespeare. Wonderful.
A lot of actors talk about sometimes putting on shoes as a character, how it's getting into the character. Is there a handle that kind of you were able to grab to pull John Cunning on?
Well, you know, I run the West Coast Actors Studio. I mean, Mark Rydell and I run the West Coast Actors Studio. Ellen Burst and Al Pacino and Harvey Keitel run the New York Actors Studio. Like I'm going back to California. I just finished the Hall of Fame in Detroit with Mitch Albom called Have a Little Faith and Lawrence Fishburne. Yeah. Brad Whitford plays Mitch Albom, and Lawrence Fishburne plays the other role. I grew this for that role, and John had directed. But I'm going back to moderate the sessions. We're on a hiatus now. A week from yesterday, we'll be opening the studio again. I run the acting sessions there. So there's a lot of things I take into account. You know, I always say what a character says, what in a well-written script dialogue is what a character is willing to share with someone else, willing to reveal. The 90% he or she isn't willing to reveal is what I do for a living. It's what isn't said. How a character hides his feelings tells us who he is. No one shows their feelings except bad actors. No one tries to laugh. People fill up and try not to laugh. If I tell you a racial joke and you laugh, you're letting me know something about yourself. No one tries to cry. People try not to cry. It's that part of it. No one tries to be drunk. Drunk by some other drink. Tries to be sober. That's what good acting is about. There are a lot of actors who are considered very good actors who I can't even watch them because they're very predictable. All an audience wants to believe is what's going on up there is happening for the first time ever. And to create that spontaneity and yet the inevitability of those moments is what a good actor does. And I teach them. I mean, Jack Nicholson was my student for 3 years, literally. shoes on can't help. But there's many more things to do. I mean, it has to do with relaxation. It has to do with the instrument being able to accept the environment. Again, where are you coming from? Where are you going? There's so many elements, and to connect them to you so that you're comfortable in that condition. So all the realities, whether they be tangible or intangible, are things that you should use to help you create that person. It's fun. That's why I still do it, is because it's like each time I'm hired, there's a bit of an adventure involved. Who is this guy? And how can I best represent what the playwright or the author put him into this piece for? Fill up that spot, not to stick out and destroy the reality, but enhance the reality. And that's why it's hard to get into the actor studio, because you'd have to do a series of auditions and you become a life member. Dustin Hoffman would tell you he auditioned 9 times before he got in. The night I got into New York as a young actor, 2,000 people auditioned that year and 2 were accepted, Steve McQueen and me. That whole year. Well, and then the responsibility of performing for Lee Strasberg and Elia Kazan and those people who were tough, and they beat me up and made me work hard. And one of the reasons I still do the work at the studio is really to pay my dues, because there was no better place for me when I was a kid actor, to work with the best actors around. Even Marilyn Monroe was going to the actor studio in those days. At that point, given up a movie career to work with Strasberg. So when you say, yes, there are all kinds of things that trigger things, right? And I don't know, not for just the shoes, not for just the hand of the time, right? But lots of others.
One of the best tools, I guess, is a great director. You guys had some really good ones.
Well, great directors, another thing about great directors, I haven't been directed in 30 years. And you say, that's insane, he's back. I come in with stuff by the time it's time to work. And I figure if they don't like it, they'll tell me. And they don't tell me. Now, Woody Allen historically doesn't direct anyone. If he doesn't like what you're doing, he fires you. So, in fact, he did the Purple Rose of Cairo. Michael Keaton, a very good actor, started, worked for 2 weeks, and he fired him. And then hired Eric Roberts, who worked for 10 days, and he fired him. And then another, I forget the third actor, I fired him. And then finally Jeff Daniels was hired. But he got shot for over a month with 3 other actors. I couldn't use any of that stuff. And you talk to Woody, he'll say, well, I don't have to direct actors. I mean, I assume I hire a good actor, he knows what to do. And if he doesn't, I get rid of him. Anyway, but Tim, by the time I started at Wood, for instance, I was doing a movie up in Vancouver called Intersection, and if you saw Intersection, I had a lot of time to look at videotapes. So Tim kept sending me Lugosi movies and a couple of interviews, and I watched it, and I looked for the differences between us. And by the time I started at Wood, I could have jumped and tap dances with Lugosi, because he either invaded me or I invaded him, but it was a sort of osmosis. I became a huge fan. I watched, there's a movie called Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla, which makes Ed Wood's movies look like Gone with the Wind. I mean, this is a terrible film about 2 guys who are like Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. They're running around an island in moon-rooms. And there's a castle, and there's a mad scientist in the castle who's syrup that turns him into a guy in a bad gorilla suit. and it's awful. I mean, it's really a bad movie. But I couldn't take my eyes off of Dorsey because in this terrible mess, he is working. There's a dignity. He's ill. But I became a huge fan of his. And I went to Hungary because he came from Hungary as one of the leading actors there, did Dracula, Broadway, and the movie. And then things didn't go so well for him. Anyway, only Tim Burton made that. And I loved doing it.
You worked a good deal with the writers. Mr. Charles Wright, Christopher involved in Johnny Murray.
Yes, I did.
Also,
I would stay after shooting, stay sometimes till 1 in the morning. One of the reasons is that Lee Casson directed the first 2 episodes.
and Lee worked with you guys on Mission
I was sure Lee was a terrific to me, directed the Wallace with
Right. Did he come over at your request?
Yes, we could only have an American director for 2 shows. The British take care of their people. You'll notice a lot of actors in this country are Australian, English. Actually, you still need a lot of American actors. The British don't let us do that. Barbara and I had to get special papers in order to do that series. Only because, as I said, we hired so many other people and created employment. But like the New York plays that go to London, Coruscant went there when I was there, and they were allowed, the Toronto company actually went there, and they were allowed to play for 2 weeks before the British company took over, and they had to leave the country after that. So British England really protects their people. What was your question?
Working with the writers to kind of reformat for American viewers.
Well, one of the things that, most television has acts and commercials. And the thing about the BBC is that there are no commercials. So the writers there often had 20-minute acts and then a 10-minute act. And the whole idea of shooting it in London was also for the American market. And they paid no attention whatsoever to the actors in terms of time. Sometimes there would be a logical break for half an hour, and then there'd be 2 breaks. So one of the things I did was that we have to have 10-minute act and another 10-minute. We have to have something like fingers at the end so that people continue to watch. They were not used to commercial television, right? watch this every week. This is totally terrible behavior. I said, they've got to provoke us. We've got to have something that offends us in a way that we even think about attacking. Right? Well, I had big articles trying to protect not only Cody, but every the character. Dick Cage's character was often doing things that he shouldn't do. Right? See something and shoot it before you found out what it was. So I was in that office protecting the show. Sometimes you become in people's eyes a problem. I'm never a problem. I'm always concerned about making something better. That's my desire. If it's good, let's make it better. If it's not good, let's make it possible. And I felt the first year, shows like The Black Sun were very inventive. You had a female god. I mean, Barry and I in that scene where we opened up that old bottle of booze. I love those kinds of moments in the sentence where you see humanity.
Specifically, I wanted to ask you, not sure about that scene, but in the first series, it's implied that the characters are being impelled through the universe, and that he has to become known as the mysterious unknown force. Is that something that was discussed within the writing staff? Okay. And what do you think the force was? What do you think the force was that was set to the outfits along on a predetermined path?
Fate. Spirituality. A lot of things. I really wanted this show to say entertain as well as have some degree of spirit and intelligence. That was what I was fighting for. I read a script and I go to Jerry, Sylvia, to the director. I said, what we can inject in here is this. And often we did. But it's tough here to do a show like that, one after another. Our effects was Ryan Johnson, his team was so George Lucas grabbed after we went on the air for the first Star Wars. He was one of the guys who created a lot of the effects for that. George Lucas had your song, Space. That's I want that guy. Because, if you compare Star Trek's effects to ours, somewhat different.
Yes. Very hectic stuff. Brian also worked on 2001. And Stanley Kubrick actually sent it to Anderson.
I didn't know that.
He did. He settled out of court over similarities between Space 1999 and 2001.
Well, I understand. In fact, the last time he went across the stage, we were on the same train away from the show. And Stanley and his friend, and they moved directly. He never came back. maybe not, because again, we did know what we were doing. The first year was different. So Lake Michigan, so it was too big. All that was friends as well. The last year of Star Trek was friends with, and looking for the shows.
Awkward pause. It was frequently compared to Star Trek. Star Trek was such a huge hit syndication. Different, but it's enormously different.
Totally different show. Not different in so many ways. I love Star Trek. But we were Star Trek. And to compare us to Star Trek, it's like it is apples to pears. It's comparing different concepts, different look, different feel, different time. And we were products of the 20th century. And all the stuff, things we were not equipped to go out of deep space. If we tried to do what that moon base did, we would not have been able to do it. It was not an intentional thing. Space travel of that kind for this group of people in this time frame, we were not technologically able, we could do it. Well, it would be great if we could control the directions we're going in, but we couldn't do what that mistake caused in terms of our scenario. So we were doing things that human being was good. It's as if the Wright brothers invented the jet liner. I mean, they wouldn't know. If Washington and Jefferson went on the Autobahn, they would probably die of a heart attack. The fastest they ever went was on a horse and wagon. The fastest way they could travel was by horse. To go 35 miles an hour would have killed them. What I'm basically saying is that was the situation Koenig and his team were in. We didn't know how to cope with what was going on. We could grow enough food to feed 300 people, and that's about it. stories, but I digress. But what was I saying?
The shorthand between you and Tim.
Oh yeah, Ken. Well, so let's rehearse. Have we rehearsed? John, me. Then he'll come up and he'll say, I said, yeah. I know what's missing. I know what he wants to say. He doesn't understand it. Because I know what's not there. Kid. It's not a you take a style, it's what your style is. And so he'll say, I'll say, yeah, let's go again. We rehearse it another time. I add those elements. He comes up and says, exactly. I said, I'm shooting. We're shooting. There's someone watching us. I said, I got it said this. I said, yeah, but I don't know what he wants. So he knows that I know that. And so in Sleepy Hollow, he didn't have a lot of time. There's a picture that it was finished. So I fly into New York. Johnny's there doing an added close. Miranda Richardson is there doing an added close. And I go into Redstone's private screen and see the movie. He couldn't get his signature. So Conrad Hall, who I think led us with, right? Did haunted with, right? Connie is a dear friend of mine. Connie passed away. I think over 100 years ago, walking out of it. Billy Fraker was the operator. House as the director. And Conrad Hall. These are friends of him. He knows that Conrad can duplicate the stuff. And he wanted me to see